Welcome to Node Mode. We are back, the NFT podcast on digital art, where we talk with artists, collectors, and reasonably intelligent individuals about all things NFTs. As usual, nothing in this video is financial advice. We are not financial advisors. And the NFT space is risky, so always do your own research. Don't make us do it for you. And if you like the content, hit the like button, subscribe, and share. Today, we are joined by the greatest NFT YouTuber of all time, Giancarlo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Finally, node mode. I've been wanting to come on here for a while. By the way, I just saw the thumbnail for this video like 5 minutes before. What in the world? I'm hoping that was that your art direction. I'm like chewing on an Ethereum token. Like I'm like some old timey gold miner.
Yeah, you're like throwing it up. I do. I have no. I guess I could have say. You're gonna have to take that up with the Nifty. I have no say in the. I don't do any creative direction on the thumbnails. I just tell them who I'm interviewing, and then they run with it, man. And they're always fun. They always make.
No, it's. I mean, it's a skillful rendition of what that that should look like. But I'm getting roasted in Midnight Labs already. My Discord. They're about it. It's gonna be a long meme.
I love it. Yeah. Just say, hey, man, let's take it up with Pio and Nick and see if we can get that thing updated for sure. So, okay, dude, I feel like I don't actually know anything about your previous life. So my favorite thing to do is to ask people, what were you doing in some random year? And I'm gonna choose the year 2016.
Okay. 2016. It was either my last year. So my first job out of college was sell side analyst, so equity research covering stock companies. And I think it might have been my last year doing that. And so I was covering just like the gaming companies. But then maybe later in that year, I switched over to this startup called Super Data Research because we were using their data at this sell side firm. And their data was just like on, anything that was happening in the gaming space in terms of digital revenue. And so it was becoming a big deal at the time in the space, people moving from buying like $60 Call of Duties or FIFA units to like spending on V-Bucks and GTA Online. And so they were offering that service. And then I ended up working for them and then helped them sort of sell that to like publishers and hedge funds again. And so, but in both jobs, it was still kind of the same thing, which was like trying to predict how certain games were going to monetize and how like these evolving business models of like season passes and map packs and microtransactions, how they were going to like flow through to the bottom line.
Wow. Okay, so that kind of it seems like it fits in very well with this industry where everyone's trying to figure out how to monetize. I imagine you've got lots of ideas, but we'll get into that in a little bit. I want to know what kind of caused you to make the switch and become, this full-time crypto NFT guy?
Well, I got into NFTs. I've been like a buy and hold crypto guy for a long time, but not really too involved with the day-to-day like evolution of it. But really got into NFTs early 2021. That like clicked immediately for me because I think of this history working with like digital assets and just like people desiring objects that only exist in like this digital realm. I'm like, okay, this is going to be huge. This is going to be, the biggest consumer application for crypto. It's going to be crypto's killer app. And I was like, how do I get in? I mean, there's no jobs. There's no companies hiring for this. So I was like, you know what? I would just make content along the lines of what I've been doing already for gaming. Gaming wasn't really a thing yet. I did a couple gaming videos, but I soon found out that like most of those games were like scammy or not sustainable in any way. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll cover what people are actually into, which is like digital identity stuff, which is like these profile pics. And that was like an interesting model, and social tokens and access tokens and all that. And I chose YouTube because one, I bought a camera for some other reasons that I had. And so I was like, you know what, let me just use it. But also Twitter at the time felt like congested. It felt like everyone was already had big audiences and it was tough to sort of crack that. Whereas on YouTube, there was just like, it was only like Maddie, DCL blogger. That was the only like YouTuber even talking about NFTs at the time.
That's smart. And I feel like everybody's trying to, get some content on YouTube. We put all of our, all this is on YouTube. And it feels like a really difficult nut to crack compared to Twitter. It just feels like I at least feel like our whole audience is hanging out on Twitter all day, not necessarily on YouTube when it comes to the NFT stuff. How did you end up growing your audience? I mean, you're like one of the biggest NFT YouTubers out there. What was your secret sauce, dude?
Well, I mean, just being one of the only ones at the beginning,
That
but
helps.
yeah, that helps. I think Twitter is really great for spreading your name throughout this like inner circle of hardcore NFT enthusiasts and crypto enthusiasts. And right now, that's all there is, really. And so it's okay to just spend more time there. And even I'm starting to think like, okay, how much time do I actually want to spend on YouTube, because that isn't growing as much as it used to versus like Twitter, or now I have a newsletter. Um, the thing is, eventually the space has to grow, right? Like we're all predicting, it'll be 10 million, 100 million people by this date. When that happens, platforms like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram are going to be sort of the doorways that they come into. I'm not convinced that people are going to just start jumping into NFT Twitter and that's going to be like learning the lingo. And I think they're going to come in from the established channels that they're already used to. And so that's sort of what happened in 2021, is that the doors were opening. A lot of people were coming in for the first time, and YouTube is just like really great at finding those people and bringing them to your videos. And so I just sort of rode that wave of that initial like 2021, 2022 bull market. Now it's nobody searching for YouTube for NFT stuff. And so you can have like a Scorsese level video. It's still only going to reach whatever 15,000, 20,000 people max, because and it's just NFT Twitter people watching on YouTube. But it's just a matter, you still kind of want to stick around with it, because you do. I mean, if you're here, you do believe that this space is going to grow, and so that property is going to be like valuable again.
I love it. So I feel like you have some really interesting takes on just like the market in general, and you have this eye for being able to see and understand maybe like certain segments or categories, and get a feel for what you think is coming next. I want to get your current state of affairs. Like, what's happening right now in the NFT space? What do you think like the current meta is as of, today is March 2nd, 2023? Where are we? Are PFPs going to just slowly die away? Or are they just, we're getting ready for another round? Is art, just going to be kind of always a little sub niche? What are your thoughts in terms of what's happening today?
Yeah, so I like to think of it in terms of like there's art, and then there's like everything else that has some kind of roadmap or utility or something else. I forget who says it. External dependencies. Someone mentioned that. I
Yeah.
think someone from Proof. External dependencies to them. And in the beginning, in 2021, 2022, it was easy to do those projects without huge operations, without a ton of effort or planning or resources. You could just pull up a profile pic, write a nice roadmap, and that was kind of it. Now it's a lot harder. Now people don't really buy that story anymore, and so going forward, if you do want to do one of those, I think you have to do something a lot more sophisticated. And the first thing that comes to mind is like gaming, right? Like gaming is a much longer development cycle, and so obviously we didn't get that in the beginning, but they've been working on that for years. So maybe we start seeing that kick in, Digidaigaku or something like that, starting this year. At the same time, profile pics, because those are going down. I'm pretty bearish on those right now. Art is still here, and art doesn't require any of those development lead times, and so that's still available. And I think that's actually like what people, if you look at the activity and what people are excited about, it tends to be art projects nowadays. It tends to be something like Jack Butcher, or right now I'm really getting into like AI art, and
Hmm.
specifically like post photography. Generative art is always a mainstay, and so while this like utility based stuff kind of reorganizes around more sophisticated things, art is sort of is going to maintain steady market share, I think, in the space.
I
But I do think in the future, like these bigger utility projects is how we reach 100 million people. And so if you ask me like 3 years from now, I think while the art audience might grow, I don't think the pace of growth is going to be anywhere near what we're going to see from like gaming or whatever else we sort of invent in the next few years.
Yeah, totally agree. I feel like the art space can continue to grow, but it's not like, I feel like it's going to get harder and harder to keep launching more projects and watch more of these art collections, grow and grow in a lot of value. I tend to think it's going to consolidate a little bit, right? And you're going to
Mhm.
have, I don't know, 12 to 20 art collections, right? That are just going to, all the value is going to keep accruing to those ones over time. And those are going to be really, really big. And hopefully I have a couple, pieces from some of those collections, but who knows? I feel a little bit like right now, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like right now, generative art, it feels like it's pretty soft right now. Like it's a lot slower in terms of the volume, and like the prices I'm seeing across the board are dipping. Whereas I think the AI art meta is what's kind of taking its place for the current narrative. And you mentioned, what was it, post photography, something or other AI.
Mhm.
I saw a tweet on that, I think briefly from you. Can you explain what that is and why you're kind of more excited on the AI side of the art thing?
Yeah, so post photography is basically using AI to create things that look like photos, but and this is an awful definition. I clearly I haven't thought too deeply in terms of like how to define this. They just look, you know, they look they look like non-realistic photography, basically. Like it could be fiction based, it could be sci-fi, it could be just things that don't exist in the real world. Using AI to sort of paint these like surreal images into them. And I think the most like popular recent example of this was Life in West America by Reynisto.
Oh yeah.
There, yeah, and that one did very well. And there's a bunch of upcoming ones by Bright Moments and by Brain Drops. And so there's and it's not a huge scene, right? We're talking about like maybe a dozen artists that people really kind of care about their what they're doing, and they tend to be the ones that are always in these different drops. Yeah, this is the one coming out by, I think they're just called postphotography.xyz, Charlie Engman, and you can see here just like how cool some of the stuff is, right? And this wasn't possible, I
Yeah.
think, like 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. At least not at the accessibility that it is now, where artists can do this type of stuff without like a decade worth of experience in it. But yeah, just kind of crazy, cool stuff. Everyone has like a different vibe. Like in this post photography drop, there's like maybe go to their website for a second if you can. I link below this tweet. Um,
Let's
I
see
have there's like a
here.
gallery.
Right here.
Yeah, right there, and then go to gallery at the top.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's just better to. This is the best way to just kind of explain it.
Yeah, to actually, yeah, see it.
Yeah, and so here's Reynisto. So Life in West America, kind of a similar vibe. But if you go down, you'll see like just past his stuff because there's other artists.
Yeah, this stuff it is interesting, right? It does feel a little bit like a new category entirely, which is kind of cool.
What I recently did a newsletter on this, and what I said was that there are like characteristics that make this. When you look at it, there are certain imperfections and things that you notice that point out that it's AI pretty clearly to you, right? Like in Life in West America, it's the hands, and often like AI
AI
doesn't
cannot get hands
cannot
right,
get
dude.
hands right.
Yeah.
Exactly, and so oftentimes they leave them in as like an intentional effect, but it is just hard to remove it. And so what I think is that that kind of adds like a charming element to a lot of these collections and this era in general, which you can think of like 10 or 20 years from now, someone will have like a map of the timeline of AI art, and this might be known as like early AI crypto art. And that era will be sort of identified by these imperfections that eventually will get smoothed out. Like eventually you'll have like just yeah, like this stuff is crazy.
Yeah,
uh,
like yeah, because it looks like it is like an actual photo. Some of these, like this one
yeah,
here, you're like, oh, this is like a photo from some crazy movie scene that's been,
exactly.
wildly edited or something. And then you look closer and you're like, no, this is not a photo, right? Like there's something off here. Uh, but this is, yeah, like look at this. This is AI still, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's all
that
AI.
that like the texture on this right in the middle
Mhm.
looks like a picture of a blanket, and then on the outskirts it looks more like a rug. It's like really, really interesting.
Yeah. And so I think this stuff is like at least in the crypto art scene, it's pretty new as far as I know. Yeah, this is Charlie Eggman. And I don't know, I just think this is there's a lot of sort of room for this to grow and explore different versions of what this could look like, and so I'm into it. I like it, and it's also just doing well in the market.
Yeah, it is. That life in West America caught me completely by surprise. Like I wasn't paying attention. I totally missed it, and I feel like that there was just now what the floor is what it's over 10 ETH, I think, right?
I
Really.
think at some point it might have hit it. I think now it's like 7 or 8.
Okay, so now it's getting down a little bit more in the, maybe someday I'll be able to purchase it if we
Yeah.
if we do that.
Because
Got
to
to
be
sell
honest,
some other stuff.
before this stuff, I really didn't understand photography. And this is me talking as like an art medium that I would collect and put on my wall. In all sort of the visual arts that people were buying and selling in crypto, that was the one where I was like, I don't really get it, man. And so it's funny that now my favorite genre, or at least one of my favorites right now, is this post photography because it does really change it in a way, right? It's like it's now closer to a painting where you're like bringing out these surreal images from someone's mind than it is, just taking a snapshot of something in the real world.
Yeah, yeah, completely. Yeah, you're turning more of the photography into art and fusing it in new and exciting ways.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so you've got the AI meta. A lot of people are are really excited about it. We got Julian here saying, yeah, we like the art in Midnight Labs there, the AI art. He's pretty excited about it. There's a lot going on. I mean, there's just so many. How do you look at some of these older, like, have you heard of the Deep Black collection, for example? Like
No.
that's an older AI art. I have a small, I think I only own one. And I literally sold like most of my bag right before they just ran up again. Um, but it's called Deep Black. I'll see if I can find it and then share it on my screen. This was like a 2019 AI project. So it had like that history. I think I found it here. I'm going to share it here real quick. Um, but like, I also kind of wonder, like, man, there's so many uh, different things when it comes to the historical narrative. I always struggle to figure out like what are people going to care about, right? Like what's going to
Mm,
matter. And I remember like this, I bought like 10 of these a year ago, thinking like, oh my gosh, this is going to be crazy. And lo and behold, like the price dipped mega after I bought, and now they're right back to like where I bought them for.
mm.
Um, but like this is like it's a collection of 3,000 early AI art on chain, right? It's like it says it's the first end-to-end AI artist on Ethereum, and I think some of this stuff is actually pretty cool, right? But like you see, this also kind of shows you just how far we've come with the AI art, right? When you look at some of these, you're like, oh, like everybody looks just completely disfigured, right? And
Yeah.
like, but you still get some really interesting images here. So yeah, something worth checking out. I wasn't sure if you'd heard of it, but like
No.
the narrative, it's hard for me to decide like, well, which project do I want to like, put all my eggs in or whatnot if I'm investing or quote unquote investing, holding some stuff long term. Because there's always some different story depending on what type of AI art you're talking about.
Yeah, it's tough. Like anything, when you get a brand new segment like this, maybe only one or two names will come out of it 10 years from now as someone that people remember. And it's just so early. There are leaders right now. Those leaders are kind of like me with YouTube. Like partly why they're leaders is because maybe they were amongst the first ones to tackle it in a serious way in this medium. Um, I expect that to change a lot over the next few years, especially now that this is all opened up. Especially now that people are actually buying these things on the secondary market. Like there's demand in a way that there wasn't a year ago. You're just going to see a lot more people experimenting with it. The apps themselves are getting better. The models are getting better, and everyone is talking about AI. So in terms of like collector mind share, I don't see that going away anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Ray in the audience who bought the Pico top on Deep Black a week or two back. I feel you, buddy. That's happened to many of us. And Brian Brinkman, good friend of the show and incredible generative artist. He's got some new stuff dropping soon. Says that Ann Spalter is a great example of
Mm.
OG AI in this NFT space that's connected to these examples. I will have to check that out. Thank you, Sir Brinkman. I'm excited to have you back on the show, man. If you guys don't know Brian, he's like just the nicest dude of all time. So
Love you, Brian.
yeah, look at that. Getting a shout out from GC as well. And also, of course, we do have JR telling us that Claire Silver has to be one of the front runners. Absolutely. If you haven't seen any of her or listened to any of her interviews, I highly recommend you do so. I heard her on an interview. I forget who she did an interview with, but her collection was at like her Genesis collection was like 2 ETH at the time. And after listening to that interview, I thought I need to buy some of her work. Like she is so eloquent, so articulate, so smart, so creative, and like just gets it and has been at the forefront of the movement. And of course, I didn't buy her collection when I could have, and now that's like a
It's like 14 ETH.
Yeah, it's like 14 ETH.
Yeah.
So congrats to her. She deserves all of that. I'm excited about it. Absolutely. Any other thoughts on AI before I want to ask you now? I want to get into gaming a lot with you because I know you've got some opinions. But did you have any kind of other final thoughts on AI or things that you're looking at in that space?
That's kind of it. I'm pretty new to it as well, and I'm still like learning as much as I can, and especially the history of it. I actually don't know like how long people have been doing it in a serious way. So that's something that I'm trying to dive deep into right now. But that's just kind of my initial thoughts.
Absolutely. Cool. Okay. So I want to move on like to we'll talk about gaming in a second, but I know that you have a lot of thoughts on like where mass adoption is going to come in and that it's not going to be through it, all of us nerds on Ethereum with our MetaMask wallets. I remember when Reddit's avatars came in, you talked a lot about that. You were like making a big fuss about it. Where do you see the next 100 million users coming in? I'm guessing it's going to be something about gaming, but maybe not. I'm curious how you think the space evolves, in terms of where everybody's coming from next and like what the next, like what's going to actually bring the masses to our little world.
Yeah. So I was actually talking about this the other day with a friend, but so a good analogy is what's happening with Ordinals right now. Have you been following Ordinals and Bitcoin scene and all that? Where this thing came out of nowhere, and there's an interesting feature of Ordinals where you have like these serial numbers to the actual NFTs, so you can actually have like a chronological order that everyone's aware of, like a global order. That's not something that we have or think about in Ethereum. And because of that, there was like this race to get there first and to basically claim one of these low numbers. And so just game theory, just thinking through how you do that, it's much easier to just copy paste something than it is to create some noble brand new idea. And
which they did, right? They copy pasted.
And so a lot of people like look at that and they're like, oh, it's just kind of a grifter fest going on in Ordinals. Well, it's because of that race, and now that race is like slowing down, and we're going to start to see more original thinking coming to the chain, hopefully. And I think that the story of Ethereum NFTs or NFTs in general was kind of similar to that, where this like brand new canvas opened up. We all have like these cool ideas. We all saw where this was going, but it takes time to create projects that are worthwhile or meaningful or actually original. And it's a lot easier to just give something that maybe, you're cutting corners or something that's a much simpler version of what it could be, because there are people already there and you're trying to satisfy the demand of the collectors that were there, in 2021. And so what we saw was the fast way of doing this was through these profile pics, and just like a bunch of access tokens, but mainly it was the profile pics that got the most volume. And the creators, what they did was they optimized for the existing base, which were mostly speculators and people that came from crypto and people that were in it for just the money. And so they optimized their projects in a way to satisfy that. So it would have a small supply so that the floor price can increase. It would have like this like generative, everyone gets a different trait, but it kind of doesn't make sense why you're doing that other than just like pretending that people care about the art. And so that I think is now dying out. And now we have to start thinking about, how we're going to actually scale out to 10 million, 100 million people. And so now we have to loosen those optimizations that we had and start thinking about, okay, how can I create something that can actually scale beyond just 10,000 people? Because what happened was you would have this profile pic, it pumps because you made it so small and people hyped it up. And then what happens at 10 out of 10 times, there's a peak, it falls, people lose money, everyone's angry. The media doesn't want to touch it. Creators, influencers don't want to talk about it outside of Web3 because they know it has like this instinctual reaction that it's like a Ponzi. And so we presented that model for like 2 years now, right?
Yeah.
And if you look around, like most of the world has said that they don't like it. like 99% of the world, like, okay, we get it. Like, it's not, you have the same model and you kind of always dress it differently and have some slight variation to it, but it's the same thing that we don't like because it feels like a Ponzi and it looks like a Ponzi. And so we're going to assume it is one. And so we've kind of hit the limit of how far we can take that model, right? We're at like, I don't know, 100,000 active people in the space, more, plus or minus. Uh, it's like a medium or low tier mobile game. That's like the user base we have. Um, and so that's it. So we've basically taken that as far as we can. And now the next step is going to be like, okay, how do we scale this? And that's going to involve thinking less about pumponomics and thinking more about, just like any other product in the real world, how do I get this into the hands of a million people? And how do I get them to actually want what I'm offering for reasons outside of speculation? Because when you do have that large supply, the speculation starts to become harder to maintain. And so how do you do that? Well, gaming is one obvious example. You can have games with a million people that are buying NFTs. Platforms like Reddit, brands like Starbucks that do ecosystems, and they have like huge user bases. Creators like Mr. Beast who do kind of like mini games or tournaments or whatever with large scale numbers. Maybe they're free NFTs, maybe they're very cheap NFTs. The point is to get them on chain, because then when they're on chain, you can like do other experiences with them and whitelist and create your own sort of like library of on chain addresses and content, as opposed to just like let's try to milk this fan base and try to get them like a small number of people rich. I think that game is sort of over. Now when you do have like a base like Reddit and Starbucks is trying to create, then you can release limited editions into that. And now you have like this context because you have this like base layer of people that care about Reddit NFTs. And now you can launch, you have your $20 Star Wars NFTs, but then you might have like your very limited 10 ETH, 100 ETH Darth Vader NFT. And now that matters a lot more because everyone cares about Reddit avatars in general. So you're just sort of changing the context a bit more instead of just like dumping the Lamborghini first and then hoping people care about that without anything built around it.
That's interesting, and it makes a lot of sense. It's almost like, it's like the freemium model. Just get everybody using it, like get everybody using the social media platform or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And then from there, you could start to offer maybe some of the premium offerings. Do you think that it's going to be like right now, I kind of feel like our whole little industry, like we're all together, we're all on Twitter, we're this one big giant community. But then something like Steppen, for example, came along last year, I think it was, and then it just went nuts. But it was like a closed garden. It was like its own little walled garden with it existed in its own little world. Do you kind of feel like maybe that's what happens? Like you got Starbucks that comes in, they've got their own customers, but it's like their own little world. It's not like we're all kind of hanging out together on Twitter anymore. And then you maybe, let's say, you have some gaming company that kind of includes NFTs into their games. But then they don't really need to interact with all of us on Twitter because they already have their game, like their user base. Do you feel like it's going to kind of get segmented like that, like different brands, different corporations or whatever? Or do you think we'll still find a way to kind of all coalesce together on Twitter?
I think there will obviously be different worlds. NFTs are going to be used in everything. And so there will be the Starbucks world where 99% of the stuff there is only known as Starbucks collectors. But I also think like Twitter is almost like a game in itself. Like I think of it as like a Fortnite where everyone does buy these NFTs from anywhere on the market and then bring them to flex in the same like sort of town square. And that's why you have people that with Fidenzas and you have the Jack Butchers and you have like the Reddit gold NFTs and the Bored Apes. They're all sort of there. And maybe if you have like the top NFT of some random ecosystem, not everyone's going to know about it, but that's still where you bring it. And so I think that will still exist. Now, what we think of NFTs right now might just shrink into art and art related collectibles that are made maybe by indie creators, as opposed to just like buying into every single loyalty program that comes out. Cause at some point like that starts to get weird. Like, what are you going to be buying into like the Target loyalty program? And that's like your specialty and your, that doesn't make sense. Like the Burger King one. I talk about it now because right now we still kind of have like these global rankings in our mind. But at some point, these things are going to start to get teased apart, and you have to choose your specialization or
Yeah.
where you enjoy spending time.
Yeah, that's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to keep up with whatever comes next.
Like the people
What
who are after the money will go anywhere where the money is. And so like we'll
Yeah.
we'll start to see like oh wait, you're buying like the TJ Maxx stuff now. I thought you were buying like art blocks 2 weeks ago. And like okay, now I get why you're here. Whereas everyone else who is in here for the actual R or the community or whatever you want to call it, they're not gonna go into that stuff because even if you can make money, it's not fun.
Yeah, don't you think it's going to be more like with what you've laid out in terms of like maybe the Starbucks thing or the Reddit, like a lot of these when there's such a massive supply, it feels like it's going to be harder to make money than it was in the past if you're a trader. Do you think the same way, or do you think, oh, there's going to be opportunity no matter what the collection is because there's certain rare things and there's certain things people will always want, or do you think it really is going to be a little bit more challenging because so many of these companies are trying to do free or very cheap high supply drops?
I think there's definitely always going to be opportunity because all these ecosystems will have limited collectibles within their worlds.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be the cherry on top that everyone aspires to get. And it's really just judging which ecosystems, like the arbitrage in what demand they're getting today versus what you think the demand will be 5 months from now or a year from now. Right? Because if only 100 people care about the limited collectible within some game, it has some value. But if you think eventually 1 million people will care about it, then the value will grow exponentially. And so, it always comes down to like just judging the stories that these creators are telling and looking at increasingly fundamentals. Like when you have games, now you can see like player metrics and things like that. And then just sort of just forecasting, okay, this game is going to be 10x what it is now. I should maybe buy a couple of these limited collectibles that everyone's going to want when they're playing it.
Got it. Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. I want to take a step back. You mentioned ordinals. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what's next for ordinals and what you're looking at on is are NFTs going to keep exploding on BTC? Are all these artists going to hop over there? What are your thoughts on NFTs on Bitcoin?
I mean, dude, it's like 12 minutes old. That's what it feels
Yeah,
like. And so
yeah, yeah.
any prediction now is based on very little. But I think from what I've read and spoken to people, the technology is sound. It can't be stopped. It's a part of Bitcoin forever. And so and now you have like this interesting thing where you can have the actual on-chain data inside of the Bitcoin protocol, which then now has it compete with IPFS. Maybe now this is the better way of doing things. Maybe this becomes a gold standard for storing high-end digital objects for the rest of time, the closest thing you can get to like permanence. Um, and so I do think like just the more high-end or valuable or important this digital asset is, the more likely it is that people will want it maybe on Bitcoin as opposed to anywhere else because of that permanence, because Bitcoin is it's still the king in the space, and it's seen as the one that's most likely to survive. Just if you think of like regulation risk and all this stuff that might happen with Ethereum, Bitcoin doesn't seem to have that. And so I can see things like the Yuga 12 fold is like the perfect example of what might come onto Bitcoin, like 300 NFTs from Yuga Labs that are going to sell for $1 billion. And it's just on ordinals. That's pretty interesting. Now, the X factor for how big and how fast this can get like super large is how many Bitcoiners convert, and that's what no one knows, right?
Yeah.
Because there's an insane amount of wealth stored up in that Bitcoin world that hasn't, I think, tapped into NFTs for whatever number of reasons. Maybe the friction of learning Ethereum or them not wanting to learn Ethereum because they think it's a shitcoin. No one really knows what that conversion rate is going to be. But if it's past like a certain point, it can actually be as big as Ethereum, I think. Because if you think of mass adoption, we always talk about mass adoption in terms of like, oh, we got to convince the normies and Timmy Fortnite has to start buying NFTs. But we also have like very low conversion within crypto, right? Like in terms of like how many people hold crypto versus how many people buy NFTs. And so something like this, and that's like the most obvious addressable market, right? Like people who already understand digital assets and digital currencies and are into this type of thing. And so to me, the wild card really is like if conversion on Bitcoin is higher than people are sort of modeling, and no one knows, then it could be really surprising how big this gets, like within like 12, 24 months.
Yeah, I like that. Is there anything that you've seen over there that that actually is interesting to you? Because that's my only critique at the moment is like, well, there's nothing I want that I'm
Right.
seeing over there other than like, hey, if you want to give me something with a low inscription number that I can flip for 10 ETH, great. I'd love that. But I haven't seen anything yet that I actually want, including Yuga's 12-fold. Like I don't like the art. It's fine. I don't mind it, but I don't think it's like amazing. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, if you let me have it for 1 ETH, I would take it, of course, because it'll sell for more than a Fidenza, and it's gonna make me irritated. But but is there anything happening over there right now that you are interested in?
um, so I mean, I do like the Udi's wizards. I don't know if you've seen those Taproot wizards.
I'm a
I
fan of
just love the
Udie, so yeah.
I just love the idea of that being it's the original like OG Bitcoin meme from Reddit many years ago, and now it's making its way as one of the first like meme profile pic collections on Bitcoin many years later as Ordinals like first launches. I think that story is really cool. I think a lot of the early supporters of it are well-known thought leaders within Bitcoin, and so that one's cool. I want one of those. Um, aside from that, it is like I said, it was this race to get a low inscription number, and so up until now, it's been mostly just copy paste, low effort stuff to get in early. Um, Over the next few months, it just has to get easier for people to set up a wallet, to browse galleries, to trade through marketplaces. Once that all happens, which as far as I can tell, technically it's all possible and coming, then high end creators on Ethereum are going to be more likely to do that because then they know that their collectors, like they're thinking about their collectors on Ethereum, that they're the friction isn't too crazy for them to come onto Bitcoin. Right now, it is. Right now, like if some big artist and a couple artists have already dropped collections, but it's a bigger ask of your collectors to say like, okay, I'm over here, and by the way, read this like 10-page handbook, clear your schedule, and learn how to like follow me. Once that gets easier, then I think we'll see more.
Yeah, totally agree. As soon as and they've already come out with like a wallet now too, right? So you can actually transact and do stuff. My play was since I was like I don't really, I there's nothing over here that I understand or get. I haven't taken the time. So what I did is I actually went and bought some. It's not related really, but I bought some .btc domains because I was
Mm.
like, hey, maybe they'll start adopting like just like ENS. It's
Did you
on
get Node? Node is
no
probably gone. That was probably one of the
it's
first
probably
ones.
gone. No, dude, I went straight for what ENS did. I went for the numbers, right? So I
Mm.
went for a 4 digit. And then what's interesting with Bitcoin is you can go down to like single digits or 2 digits. And unlike ENS, you have to have 3 digits. But like so there's a club called the 520 Club that is a single letter and a single number. So I got one of
Okay.
those.
All
and,
right,
and
Node.
yeah, we'll see. We'll
Making
see what
plays.
happens.
Making plays.
Yeah,
I
we'll
like
see
it.
what happens if anyone yeah, but what's interesting is the stacks STX, that coin,
Mhm.
um it rocketed. So it's like kind of by default I sort of doubled. I think like the stat you buy and sell the BTC domains in stacks. And so they're denominated in stacks. So because of that, like I bought some stacks and stacks has since the ordinals thing happened, stacks has like doubled or tripled in value, like the coin itself,
Jesus.
which doesn't really make any sense when you think about it because
Right.
Stacks is layer two. But I think it's just the idea that like maybe Bitcoiners are getting more and more open to like, hey, maybe our chain, like maybe we should program stuff on the chain. Whereas before, all Bitcoiners are, the hardcore guys are like, it's digital gold, don't touch it.
Yeah, it's all getting like enveloped in this demand bubble that's happening. Bubble's not the word. Demand cloud that is just spreading into like all things Bitcoin. Um, I mean, I'm waiting for that to happen with rare Pepes. I don't know if the prices have changed recently. I haven't looked, but hopefully that brings more demand or a new wave of fresh highs to rare Pepes, which I think is like a classic, OG collection.
Yeah, which that also brings up another interesting question because I mean, that's rare Pepes are one of those things where I feel like everybody kind of agrees like that's like the OG kind of card. It was like on Bitcoin, however, on Counterparty, whatever, however that worked. I never took the time to understand it. But like, yet, like, there's still not a lot of liquidity for all these rare
Right.
Pepe cards. And why do you think that is?
Well, for a while, they traded through on Ethereum through these emblem vaults, which people are now using for ordinals, and the user interface was dog shit. It was terrible. Like to
Yeah.
find the rare Pepe that you wanted and to bid on it, it was like an entire afternoon, or a couple days just to get what you wanted. And so that I think has been improving. Like I think they've done a lot of changes, so now it's easier to sort and filter. Eventually that'll get even easier, and so maybe that's like an arbitrage where you're like, okay, in 5 years this will be 100 times easier to buy rare Pepes, and Bitcoin NFTs are going to be way bigger than they are now, maybe. And so maybe that's an opportunity. There's also the problem that there's so many of them, and people you have to kind of like read a little bit to understand like, okay, these series are more valuable than these. You got to look at the supply and the quantity. Certain memes are more OG memes or ones that people kind of have an affinity for. So the serious collector I think will eventually come around, but it's not the kind of thing that like average normies that don't really care too much about the history of crypto art is going to get into. So you're never going to see like it be this mainstream thing that everyone's kind of singing kumbaya around a fire praising it.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, I'm always wondering, just how many people are going to care, right? And
Mhm.
that'll be interesting. The reality is it's just all supply and demand, of course. So as long as you've got like a hundred really rich dudes that want one thing, that's kind of how most of the generative art space is probably. Like there's probably like 100 people that
Right.
control most of the high end gen
And
art
and
plays.
and there's certain cards that will do well, like I'm very confident, like the Nakamoto card, like certain cards from the early series that are low supply, those are going to do very well because it's not just Bitcoin history; it's crypto art history and crypto like digital asset history, basically, right? So, um, it was I believe it's considered the first like crypto art collectible collection, as opposed to like there were some game assets that came out before, but um, that is like that doesn't go away. Like if we always throw around like these projects that people care about today, but the thing that we know for sure is this chronological order that's set in stone. So that's why a lot of the historical NFT guys, they kind of obsess over that as opposed to whatever is the hot topic of the week.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I give those guys a little bit of a flack because I'm just like half the time I feel like they try and craft these narratives that don't really exist. But
Everyone though, everyone.
yeah, and I'm like, look, it's fair. And one of their narratives that is actually really good is like they have this image. It's like an image of a funnel, and it just shows like in 2017 there's only like
My
five
bags at
projects.
the top. Oh,
Yeah,
okay. I
yeah.
know.
It's
Yeah,
like in 2017 there were 5 projects, and then in 2018 there were 10, and then 2019 there were 20, and then in 2021 there were like 5,000.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so you're like, there's only so many at the beginning of this funnel, and I'm like, yeah, and like most of those like nobody cares, right? But that it is a true fact that there's only so many in the beginning, and some
Right.
of those will have value. It just, yeah, it drives me a little bit crazy. But you're right, dude. We all spin narratives around whatever it is, and so, hey, those historical guys, they have the right to create their own narratives as well.
And that narrative, as far as narratives go, it's a little more logical than some other ones we have. Like there's some shit. I'm not gonna call anyone out, but there's some like absolute shit tier narratives that are out there right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you there. That's fair. That is 100% fair. Okay, so let's talk games. I suck at games. I'm not a gamer. Uh my only claim to fame is that about a few months ago I decided to start playing StarCraft 2, and I just freaking love it.
Hmm.
I'm a terrible player, but I'm like, hey, I'm starting to get into games. I like them. I still feel like it's really really hard for me to assess, you know, what the next there's just a new gaming studio coming up all the time, right? A new gaming project that's coming out all the time. What do you look at when you're looking at, some new gaming NFTs that are coming out? Do you have a criteria for what things you trust, or are there any at all that you're even remotely interested in right now?
I mean, 90% of the analysis is going to come down to who the founders are, before the game actually comes out, right? Like,
Yeah.
have they released games in the past that have scaled, that were very popular, that did very well? And if so, that already gets you 90% of the way there, and at least taking a small bet on that. Outside of that, if maybe there, I don't deal with anonymous founders in the gaming space. But let's say they're docs, but they don't have this track record. Well, then it's just a story. Okay, what's the story they're telling? Okay, it's this type of genre. Okay, how's that genre doing? Is it a shooter? Okay, well now you're competing in a very competitive space with where the AAA guys are very focused in on. Is it this like obscure on chain nerdy role playing thing? Okay, there's not as much competition there, but now you're limiting the reach of your user base. And there's so many of those in crypto specifically, these like kind of like nerdy on-chain things that have like these crazy white papers and they've thought everything out and they have their own language and all that. And it's just like, okay, cool. But like that's gonna be nine people playing it.
Yeah.
And so that's like a hobby. Um, so yeah, it's just kind of the story, the founders, the genre they're tackling, and then the sneak peeks that they start giving out. A lot of people get swayed by the visuals, and people use like Unreal Engine or something like that. It's just becoming more common, and it's almost commodifying the visual side of gaming. Uh, People kind of fall into that as opposed to like, okay, is there some core game loop that is interesting and polished that people are just going to keep coming back without the NFT being like the big carrot that's bringing them there. And that's the other thing. It's like, okay, you want NFTs as part of it, but they can't be at the central like core of it unless you really thought through like the economy, which no one has figured out yet. This is
Yeah.
something that no one has figured out yet. And so good luck if you're trying to be the first one to have it be this like central focus of your game.
If you had to predict, what kind of game do you feel like is going to be the most successful in incorporating NFTs?
Um, I mean, just like if you think of something like Fortnite, which is everyone's like classic example, but anything that has cosmetics, digital identity, that's just like a very easy way to slip in NFTs without having them being this like thing you're farming or this core part of the economy. It's just like on the outskirts. 99% of players won't buy them. 1 or 2% will, and these happen to be also tradable assets. Then from there, you can get way more complicated and have them be part of your land and these assets that are central to the economy. And at that point, they can work. And I think maybe we'll see like a game changing idea come out of that. But it's just as someone who's trying to gauge how this game's going to do from the outside, and all you have is a white paper. I feel like that you have to like assume there's a ton of risk in execution and figuring out anything complex. And so for me, it's just like, is the game cool? Is there some NFT aspect to it? I don't care how central it is, but the visual identity stuff works because everyone who plays the game, as long as they like the game, they'll some percentage will want the cool looking things in there. For me, that's like a starting point and what I look for, but there's not much of that. It's more of like the complex thing because they're appealing to crypto speculators that aren't gamers. And so they're not gonna, they're gonna be like, oh, here's a piece of land that you can farm, never look at the game, never play the game, and the players are gonna come to your land and rent from you and things like that. And so they love those types of projects, but I'm not too bullish on them.
That makes sense. Sometimes I almost wonder if, one of the games is going to be something very simple and like some simple, dumb little thing that it's not some like AAA immersive,
Mhm.
like world that has been built and spent $1 billion on. It's like something like fun, like, some simple little game that you can play. And then there's, I don't know. I wonder if there's some
Yeah.
kind of simplicity component there.
I mean, you should remember that 90% of games fail even without NFTs. And so now you're adding this second layer of complexity to it, that adds like another 9% failure rate to it maybe. But already like there's like 12 games that have some scale and reputation behind them right now. And people just think they're all gonna do well. But even those are 90% of them are gonna fail. And so I wouldn't invest a ton into a game prior to launch. The only one I have is Digidaigaku, but I don't do it often, and it's not even like I'm so incredibly bullish on that one. We haven't even seen what the game looks like. Um, it just, I was itching to buy something. I don't have a great reason why I did.
Well,
Um,
the founder happens to be like, great at getting attention, so that's good for bags going up. So, I'm sure it's turned out to be a solid,
well, the track record is there. Like, he's done
yeah,
that before, and that's really
exactly.
what it comes down to. It's like, have you done this exact thing? Well, okay, then I'm not gonna start from a point of like pure skepticism that you can do it again.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I titled this episode like the next NFT bull run to make Pio happy because he really likes those clickbaity titles. But it was really just
You got
wanted
to
to
play the
chat.
game. This is
Yeah, you
YouTube. You got to play.
got to play the game. So if you had to say when is the next
When is
NFT
it?
bull run and what is the next NFT bull run? Like what's it going to look like?
Well, like I said, the ordinals thing is very interesting because we don't know how many people will convert from the Bitcoin world. That could be it. Like maybe we start seeing just demand come from there, and the percentage of the crypto world that cares about NFTs goes from like 5% to 15%, which would be huge. It might not even be 5%. I'm not sure. Us outside of that, it has to. We need a couple of proof points from these like early Web 2 companies that are experimenting. So we need Reddit to turn on monetization because so far they've been doing free things and a couple like small paid drops, but can they do like mass scale Star Wars, Dragon Ball Z branded drops like Fortnite does? That could be a good example. Starbucks, what are they doing with their loyalty program? Could they turn that on and it turns out to be this crazy thing for them? Once you have a couple of proof points that are not built around speculation that are sustainable, then you start to see many other Web2 companies come in now that there's like this leader that took the brunt of the risk for them. How long does that take? I don't know. And then there's the gaming side of things, which I think could start this year. Like I think Square Enix is coming out with something. They're the main AAA company that is like deep into Web3. So second half of 2023, we could start to see the first couple of games that do reach maybe like 1 million players. And it really just takes a couple of these to hit. And then you look at Polygon and they have so many partnerships that, are like these massive companies that if one of those hits, if any of these things hits, you can quadruple the base of NFT collectors today in like overnight. Again, we have like 100,000 people actively participating. And so like in terms of bull run, now I think a bull run in terms of like how many people are coming into the space, which might not be what you guys refer to sometimes. Bull run, sometimes people are like, when are people going to buy my pudgy penguins? And that's what they call a bull run. I don't know how much of those that demand is going to cross over into like these Gen 1 bags that everyone has. My guess would be very little, unless they're like maybe historical or not related to some random crypto meme that no one knows about. But in terms of like users coming to Web3, I think second half of this year we could see the current base grow by a lot.
Love it. Okay. Second to last question. We got
Second
someone
to-
wondering,
okay.
wondering on bullish on other deeds. What are your thoughts? Let's talk about Yuga since they did make a splash with Mongrel just made a cool 7 figures, which was awesome.
Crazy.
Crazy. That's a big deal. But what are your thoughts on Yuga's whole direction there?
So, I mean, remember what I said earlier? Like, I really look for creators that have experience with gaming and executing like a scalable game, and this is not an example of that. The core Yuga team has no experience with gaming. Now, can they hire people that do have experience? Yes, and they are. I mean, they're partnering with Animoca, which also doesn't have a ton of experience with scalable examples of scalable games, but they know more. But when you think about what other side came out of, it was because Yuga needed a next chapter that had a certain ambition and scale that would impress the space. And maybe they had some like aspirations for gaming just from their personal lives, but they really needed something. And it felt like Other Side was built to accommodate just what the next chapter should look like for Yuga, as opposed to them having an idea for a game that they thought the world absolutely needed. And they're bringing it to you, and the demand is going to be like around the corner on day one. This doesn't feel like something like that, right? It feels like, okay, we need something. Oh, what should we do? Should we create more profile pics? Should we do that? well, let's do a metaverse. Let's do a game. And maybe they had like Animoku coming in and saying like, oh, well, we already have like the foundation of something. Why don't we slip this here and put the Yuga brand there? And then there you go. And so that to me is not like what you normally want to look for. You want to see like, okay, I have this like crazy idea, or I have this passion that I've been working on for a long time. And I don't know. I have no read on like how good the game's going to be, but just from like the psychology of why it's coming into existence, it's not super exciting to me.
Interesting. We do have a shout. I think this is the real Tropo. I can't believe he's listening to our little feed. What's going on, Tropo? Good to hear from you. He does mention that Yuga's new CEO is the former #2 at Activision/Blizzard. So there's that's something, right?
That is something.
That is, but at the same time, I'm with you. It's like it wasn't like, from day one they're like, we're creating a game. It was like, hey, we made a successful. And look, it's okay to make things up as you go. And so far, Yuga has been the best at it, and they keep bringing in the best resources. So I hope. Well,
they have the money to bring those people in, but is that how amazing products get built? Where you just sort of like start hiring like the people who in the industry that have experience with it, and then just kind of cobble together this team around you to produce it, like have the best products that we've ever seen in this world? Is that like the normal track record?
Yeah, no, not exactly. No. It's like that. Otherwise, Google would have like a billion amazing products, and yet, they just still kind of stick to a couple that do really well. Interesting. I think you bring up a really good point, for sure. So, okay, my final question to you. I always ask this of my guests. What's your advice for people that are coming into the space today, that are brand new, or just kind of struggling to make it? What would be your advice to somebody that's trying to like just either get more involved or make a little bit of money here in this space without it being financial advice, of course? What's your advice to anybody that's out there now?
So I think of this phase as a phase where we're not really monetizing as much. I don't think there's a ton of people in the space that are actually making money outside of maybe like a handful of traders, a handful of creators and artists, and a handful of people in media. But by and large, this isn't a lucrative time for NFTs. Right? I think that's fair to say.
Yes.
And so I would still have a plan for how you're going to make money. But in the time you're spending in NFTs, I would say the number one priority is building an audience and getting attention for a certain skill set that you have or a certain thing that you're offering. And then that's just the most important currency in the space. We see time and time again how attention eventually turns into other beautiful things, often money. And so that's the priority number one. Find a niche, find something that people are asking about that you can sort of offer as like a consistent maybe data point or thread or whatever on Twitter. Explore other platforms. Like I know Twitter and YouTube. I have no idea what's going on Instagram or TikTok or Twitch in terms of NFTs. Is there any audience there that isn't getting served? And what are existing channels offering them that maybe you can just kind of yoink and twist a little bit? But yeah, that's sort of the number one goal is to figure out what you can give people in terms of value that helps them in some way, and start building an audience. And don't worry too much about monetization for now because no one's doing it. Think of 2024, 2025, the space, very likely the space will be a lot bigger. It's just a game of patience right now.
Thank you so much. You heard it here first. Giancarlo saying the bull run's coming in a year or two. So that's what we got to wait for.
Is that what I said?
Almost. Thanks so much for joining, Giancarlo. This has been fantastic. Another episode of Node Mode in the books. Shout out to everybody that joined. Next week, we got OSF coming on. So it'll be interesting to talk about that kind of mega trade that he did.
Jeez.
And congrats again.
I don't have to follow that.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. So thanks again, GC, for joining. Check out Giancarlo on Twitter and on YouTube. I'm sure you're probably already following him on both places. And in the Discord, if you ever find yourself in a Discord with him, he's G Sizzle. So be looking forward to that.
Anything else you want to give out? No, my address too.
Give you the four. I'll give him the four numbers after that as well. Yeah, all good, man. Okay, thanks everybody. We will catch you later.
All right, take care.